Most murderers leave evidence behind. DNA, fingerprints, a weapon. But in 1922, a killer didn't just walk into a home. They lived there for days before the family even realized they were being hunted. Welcome to Hinterkaifeck, a name that in Germany is synonymous with pure, unadulterated fear. It's not just that 6 people were slaughtered on a remote Bavarian farm. It's the sheer, cold-blooded intimacy of it. This wasn't a crime of passion. This was a siege. The year was 1922. Bavaria was still reeling from the aftermath of the Great War, a place of deep woods, long winters, and isolation. The Hinterkaifeck farm sat in a pocket of land so secluded that the nearest town felt like it was in another century. This was the home of the Gruber family. Andreas, his wife Kazilla, their daughter Victoria, and her 2 young children, Kazilla and Joseph. They were a closed-off family. Stern, private, and by most accounts not particularly well-liked by the locals. They kept to themselves and the farm kept their secrets. But in March of 1922, the farm started whispering. It began with small things. The housekeeper, who had left 6 months prior, told anyone who would listen that the house was haunted. She'd heard footsteps in the attic. She'd heard voices when no one was there. The family laughed it off, but they wouldn't be laughing for long. Days before the murders, Andreas Gruber told a neighbor something that should have chilled him to the bone. He'd found tracks in the snow, footprints. They led from the forest, a dense, dark expanse that bordered the property, straight to the house. But they didn't lead back out. He checked the attic. He checked the tool shed. He checked the perimeter. There was no one, just the silence of the Bavarian winter and the knowledge that something or someone had been in his domain. He found a newspaper in the yard that the family didn't subscribe to. He noticed the lock on the tool shed had been tampered with. He heard the footsteps now, too. The slow, deliberate creak of floorboards in the upper levels of the house while the family was eating dinner downstairs. You'd think they'd leave, right? Any sane person would grab their children and run into the night. But fear is a funny thing. It blinds you. They didn't think they were being hunted. They thought they were being pranked. They thought it was a neighbor, a drifter, someone playing a sick game. They couldn't conceive that the danger wasn't outside the walls. It was already inside them. On the evening of March 31st, 1922, the atmosphere at Hinterkaifeck turned lethal. We don't know the exact order. We don't know the exact method. We only know the aftermath. Andreas, his wife, his daughter Victoria, and young Kazilla were lured, one by one, into the barn. They were struck down with a mattock, a brutal, heavy farm tool. The killer, working with a sickening efficiency, dispatched them in the dark, and then the killer went for the final target. Young Joseph, the baby, was killed in his crib, but this is where Hinterkaifeck stops being a crime and starts becoming a nightmare. If you kill a family, you run. You vanish. You take your spoils and you disappear into the shadows. The killer at Hinterkaifeck didn't run. Days passed. The neighbors noticed the smoke rising from the chimney. They noticed the livestock was being fed. They noticed the family hadn't been to church. When they finally broke into the farm on April 4th, they found the bodies in the barn covered in hay. But when they checked the house, they found something that makes your skin crawl. Someone had been living there. The killer had eaten the family's food. They had slept in their beds. They had tended to the animals. They had lingered in the house, smelling the scent of the blood they had spilled, enjoying the warmth of the fire that had been stoked by the very people they had just murdered. The killer didn't just take their lives, they occupied their existence. The police investigation was a masterclass in failure. They interrogated over 100 people. They considered drifters, former employees, vengeful lovers, and neighbors. They even brought in a psychic because when logic fails, desperation takes over. They decapitated the victims and sent the skulls to Munich to be analyzed by a clairvoyant, hopping for a sign from beyond the grave. They found nothing. Theories have been piling up for a century. Was it the neighbor who had a decades-old grudge against Andreas? Was it a drifter who wandered out of the woods and found a perfect, isolated target? Or was it something darker, something tied to the family's own twisted history? Every lead was a dead end. Every suspect had an alibi, or the evidence was too thin, or the time had simply washed away the truth. The case file remains open, a stain on the record of German law enforcement. We still don't know who did it. We don't know why they stayed. We don't know how they looked the children in the eyes before they struck, but Hinterkaifeck isn't just about a murder. It's about the vulnerability of the home. It's about the fact that sometimes the monster isn't under the bed. Sometimes the monster is sitting in the attic, waiting for you to turn out the lights. Every time you hear a floorboard creak in the middle of the night, every time you think you're alone when you're really not. Just remember Hinterkaifeck. What's your theory? Was it the neighbor, the drifter, or something even more unhinged? Drop your best theory in the comments. I read every single one. Stay curious and stay vigilant. History is darker than you think.